I'm here, Richard.
All right. Let me stop sharing and I'll let you
Absolutely
take over.
Recording has started, by the way.
All right. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, can you guys, everyone see my desktop?
We can.
All right, perfect. So good afternoon, everybody. We are glad to have you on our last call of the year. As Richard said, my name is Scott Ellison. I work with some of you on the call, so I'm glad that you're here today. I'm actually in New Orleans attending ISTE 2022 this year, so it's good to be back for in-person events. And you may have some of your peers here or folks from your institutions. So my call today, I wanted to talk about Windows Update for Business. I've been, as when we did our first introductions back, when we started our community call, I've been at Microsoft probably about 16 years. So I've seen a lot of different ways that we've been able to modernize. We've had available to deploy software updates and tools like, Windows Server Update Services, System Center Configuration Manager, now Microsoft Endpoint Config Manager. Actually was pretty good at, even if you want to even go further back, there was a tool called Inventory Tool for Microsoft Updates, which was used in the SMS 2003 days. So we've had a plethora of tools that you could use for updates. So around the Windows 10 timeframe, we have come out with Windows Update for Business, which was, instead of taking an approach of, where you decide what the updates, that you would, go into the tool like Configuration Manager and actually, cherry pick which updates you want to deploy and have them to deploy software update groups, and then ensuring that your devices were on the network, that you would just turn this job over to the internet and let the internet to worry about, your content, and you can control the settings. So as like with any feature set, Windows Update for Business has matured over time. And this session is really geared today for those of you that are not using Windows Update for Business. Or maybe you are testing it out. Maybe you're either using it in standalone Intune or in, in a co-management scenario with Intune and Config Manager. So, it's always good to just go through this refresher here, and I'm going to scroll through, but, I want to be able, when you leave here today, that you know what the advantages are of moving to Windows Update for Business. So we call this WFB as an acronym, but let's get into it. So what are your different types of updates? So the 4 updates that you need to familiarize yourself with any kind of update are feature updates, quality updates, driver updates, Microsoft product updates. This would include other types of Microsoft products, and I would include like a SQL Server update that's pushed down through Windows Update, or let's say a Windows malicious software removal tool. So how can we control specific updates? All right, so the first piece with Intune is using the feature update mechanism. Now, if you go to this today and you look inside the Endpoint Manager console and you see a preview tag, what does that necessarily mean? So that means basically the feature in there, you could call Microsoft if you need to get help on it and get support and it's not working the way you want it to. We're still going to support you, meaning that a support call, you can put in a support ticket, support engineer is going to take the call and help you troubleshoot what the issue could be. Now, this is one of the biggest features that I probably, if I had to go and say this was one of the biggest additions for software updates in Intune, this would have been one of my favorites, because previously, when we just had Windows Update for Business and you didn't necessarily have a lot of granular control over what feature updates that you installed, and you couldn't specifically say when you wanted the specific feature update of Windows to actually be deployed in your environment when Windows 10 first came out. So this feature specifically, this can also be deployed through group policy if you're still using GPOs, but in Intune it's a whole lot simpler. But this gives you specific feature control over the OS version. So if you want to keep all of your devices on a fall release of Windows 10 21H2 for the full 30 months, you can keep them on that release. If you want to go in and start upgrading devices to Windows 10, Windows 11 21H2, you can do that as well. This is also very useful for skipping versions of Windows. So if you have a fleet of devices that have arrived and they're running Windows 11 21H2, and you just maybe want to skip to next year's release or take full advantage of the 36 months of enterprise or education support, remember it's 24 months for Pro and the home SKUs, then you can do that. And so this will also be very useful in not having to worry about making sure that your devices are on the latest version of Windows. Now, a couple of things that have been added over time. When this feature first came out, it just primarily dealt with, you could lock it in on a feature update and that was it. We've actually added additional rollout options in the last 12 months. And of course, you can see those different options there on the slide. Now, additional rollout options are going to be made available. They haven't been published yet, but they will be made available so you can get more granular as to, like, for example, if you want them to deploy at a specific day and time. One call out that you need to be fully aware of is that if you are going to be using the feature update inside of Intune, make sure you do not combine it with the update deferrals feature in the update rings. That will override this feature. So make sure that if you do have deferrals set and you implement this feature, that you put the deferrals back to 0 in your update rings and before you deploy this. A couple of things with the update rings in Intune. So again, this is important because this is what sets your update policy for your Windows 10 and your Windows 11 devices. This is going to control your Patch Tuesday updates. You probably hear us reference an A week, a B week, or C week, or a D week. Like, so, that follows our, the 4 weeks of a month. So if we say that there's going to be a B week update in a blog, what we are referring to is saying basically that is going to be the traditional Patch Tuesday update. Now, what this ring does is this is going to set up your patching policies for your updates. And so this will also control your Microsoft products as well. If you need to, you can block those. You can also block your drivers. You can also set up your active hours as part of your user and I'll cover that in just a second. But one of the things I do want to make clear in deferrals. So for example, you're going to normally use deferrals with specific update rings. So you may have on Patch Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month, you may have the first 1% of computers in your organization. By Thursday, you've probably expanded that number to 5%, and maybe by Friday, you're taking up 15, 20%. Now, one thing that I do want specifically want to call out is that Windows drivers do not follow deferrals. So if a OEM or a hardware vendor publishes a driver to Windows Update, which is becoming a more common thing, and I'll have some more information to share about that later in the presentation, then make sure to know that they do not follow your deferral policies. Now, when does an update actually install based on the when you actually install an update based on a deferral period? So let's say that you have a deadline. You've set up a deferral of 7 days for your main group of devices, and you have a deadline of 2 days. What is that experience going to be like? So the user experience for that is that they're going to receive the update on day 7. And then, of course, you've set a deadline for 2 days. So on day 9 of the update release, that is when the restart will be enforced on the device. A couple of things with the Windows Update for Business user experience. When it comes to your automatic updates behavior, The default setting is going to be auto install at maintenance time. A lot of folks ask what is maintenance time? Maintenance time is set at by default at midnight for the local Windows 10 and Windows 11 device. During that time, Windows will run specific scheduled tasks in the background to ensure that your device is running performing optimally. I usually like, depending on what the user experience is, you can also have there's a setting there for auto install and restart at maintenance time, and then auto restart the computer. So again, it depends on what the policy is for your organization and how you're going to educate users about how they intake updates. Specifically, I always encourage a setting that you set called active hours. Now, active hours is very important because that allows for that prevents Windows from restarting when the device is in active use. Now, our default active hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That can be expanded up to 18 full hours. And again, that's another setting that you can set as a GPO as well if you need to. So you can do Windows Update for Business with group policy, but again, Intune is just going to be a lot easier because one, you don't have to wait for the devices to come back onto the network to get the policies. Another setting that I just think they're important to set for is restart checks. Restart checks is a process where the update orchestrator service looks for things like user presence, low battery, full screen mode, or is it in a phone call? That way the device doesn't, we don't attempt to restart a device with 10% battery or 5% battery. Other options I've always encouraged my customers to set is the option to pause Windows Update. I think that's good to disable for users. You as an administrator should have full control over that, not the end users, because if given the choice, end users will not install updates. So I usually tell customers to set that to disable, but do give customers the chance to check for Windows updates. And then, of course, you can also choose whether you want to require user approval to dismiss the restart notifications. Notice that in the prompt in the little graphic that I have over on the right-hand side, you have update and shutdown and update and restart. Windows 11 added the ability to know how long the update will take. So it can be usually as low as 3 minutes. My experience, I think the longest one I've had has been 6. Now, as part of Windows Update for Business, we recommend that you leverage multiple update rings and groups to do a validation of your update as you deploy it within your organization. So again, usually on Patch Tuesday, you'll probably intake the first 1% of your devices, then expand that out to 2.5, 11, and then it'll just continue to grow until you follow that schedule. Now, advantages of Windows Update. Basically, the device is going to be connected anywhere. A lot of times, what we see, especially in higher ed or K-12, devices are handed to administrators, faculty members, or, in K-12, the devices may be in the hands of teachers, and they come back in the fall and the devices are not patched. They're hitting your network. You don't know if they've been infected with any kind of malware or any kind of ransomware that could have been patched by a vulnerability. Ann Johnson, one of our corporate VPs, said one of the highest attacks that we've seen, she is over our cybersecurity team, but one of the biggest vulnerabilities that attackers attack is not the zero-day exploits, but the vulnerabilities that organizations have not patched or have not, plugged those holes on. So this way, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, these devices will be, as long as they're connected to the internet, they will get the updates that they need and will stay patched. Most organizations will see an improvement in their patching by moving from Windows Update for Business. The other thing is that the Windows Update offers the full unified update platform. What does that necessarily mean? That means the updates that the device is going to download they're typically going to be smaller, because they're going to have the Windows Update client is only going to download the bits that it needs to get it up to that specific patching level. Therefore, it decreases the download size. It's also going to preserve your language packs and features on demand. And of course, none of that unified update platform is available if you're still using either standalone WSS server today Not sure about Config Manager. I don't think so, but yeah, it's only available in Windows Update for Business. Now, it also uses a more consumer-like Windows Update experience. So it uses the native Windows notifications that pop out from the lower right-hand corner. It also gives users the ability to choose when they want to restart their device. And then the machine looks at actively when maybe to schedule a restart without user impact. Now, I will say that Configuration Manager in Windows, I don't know if this feature is, I haven't checked recently, but they are looking to move to a more consumer-based, more native Windows update experience, even in its own notifications. So if you're still using Config Manager to patch your devices, then we'll have that more consumer-like Windows Update experience. Now, one of the things that I want to definitely talk about is the expedited updates, and everybody probably recalls back in July of 2021, that was the last time that we released a out-of-band Windows patch. So folks remember that, and it broke. Unfortunately, I think there was a lot of printing issues that became of that, and of course, some of you probably were personally impacted by that. So what can you do to expedite your security updates? So as part of any good update policy, every organization needs a way to be able to deploy updates in a much more aggressive manner outside to deal with issues that may come up. And so again, the last one was in July 2021. My experience has been in that we will release an out-of-band patch once a year. It is not something we like to do because everybody loves the predictability of, our Patch Tuesday cycle. But unfortunately, sometimes, there are issues beyond our control that force us to release an out-of-band patch. So with the expedited update policies, what this is going to allow for is for it overrides your update deferral rings. It's more aggressive in how it delivers policy to the device, and reforce can be reinforced from, instead of maybe a 5-day restart window, you can do it down to a 0 or 2-day window. It's also, I had a school district recently wanting to try to get all their devices, so they actually use this just to get all their devices back up to date, and we're very aggressive about it for during the month of May, and actually got most of their compliance back up from a 60 almost to a 90% ratio. So actually worked out pretty well for them. Now, another thing too that's very unique with Windows Update for Business is what's called safeguard holds. Now, safeguard holds, there's actually a new report inside of Endpoint Manager. But what safeguard holds is basically if there's a Windows device, this can be not just Surface, but it can be related to OEM as well. If we see there is a driver or any known issue that is ensuring that the upgrade experience is not going to be a good one, meaning that, and you'll see here in this case, there was a safeguard hold for this specific audio driver. We will actually put a safeguard hold in place, and that means that the feature update will not be offered to that Windows device. Now, obviously, you do have the option to override safeguard holds, which is something we would strongly discourage you from doing. But this does provide a mechanism that devices do not get bricked or, do run into issues that if you are taking a new feature update. So, but just be aware, a lot of times when we offer a new feature update, so again, like as Richard said earlier, we have the next version of Windows 11, the 22H2 version, that's going to be available in probably GA in the fall. It's in release preview. If we start seeing issues with it that impact certain devices based on our telemetry, then we'll put safeguard holds on those specific device types. Now, what about reporting? Now, this has been an area that, let's be honest, it's probably been a little poor, but there are some opportunities for improvement, and there are some ways that you can get reports For your features and expedited updates, we have those built in Intune today. We also have an option that we recommended you look at upgrade compliance. Now, upgrade compliance is an Azure solution. It just requires the Azure subscription, but it is free as long as you have an EES agreement. It's actually very easy to set up. You can go into the settings catalog of Endpoint Manager and just find the 4 settings that you need to, and then target it to your devices, and then they'll start within 48 hours of reporting data into update compliance. But it utilizes the log analytics and the Windows telemetry, and it also has a analytics workbook for any safeguard holds. And then you can also see any delivery optimization savings that you have as well. What delivery optimization is, that's the technology built into Windows 10. It allows the Windows device to grab information from its peers on the network. Again, delivery optimization not only works with featuring quality updates, but also any Windows Win32 applications as well, and Microsoft Store updates. So again, this is just a slide here that kind of shows the, your safeguard holds. So again, if you have devices that are in your organization that are impacted by the safeguard hold, you'll be able to identify those devices. And then if you have users that, call in and say, hey, I can't upgrade my device to Windows 11, I want it today, then you can educate them as to why their device is not being able to be upgraded. We also have a Windows, if you're into Graph API and PowerShell and want some more granular control of things like timing or failure thresholds, stage rollouts, monitoring rules, we do have a Windows Update Deployment Service that will take advantage of those 2 features. And then you can, do custom scripting against our Graph APIs in order to take advantage of those services. Now, one of the things that still has not been released yet, and hopefully we announced this back in the spring of 2021, so I would have hoped by now we would have had something in private preview, but like with anything, until it gets to a point where we feel like it's ready, we're not going to release it. But we are still planning to have a commercial deployment service for drivers and firmware. And what this basically is going to be is a service where you can schedule and you can individually go in there and approve the specific update, driver updates for a specific device. So for example, you may want to approve a firmware update that comes down from Surface or from Dell or from HP, but yet you want to block your wireless driver because during your testing you found issues with that update. So there'll be an approval process along with controlled scheduling that'll be a part of that. And of course, that will be a huge addition. This is probably one of the features I've been looking forward to the most, because it will give you full control today, whereas drivers today is an all or nothing scenario. This is going to actually give you a lot more granular control and give you full management of that device and keeping that device up to date. Now, how can you download and minimize your network impact from downloading all this content from the internet? Again, I would recommend that you look at delivery optimization policies. Those can be configured both in Config Manager and inside of Intune. You can also implement a connected cache service. It can use Microsoft Connected Cache if you're in a co-management scenario with Configuration Manager and Intune. And basically, think of the connected cache server as your Config Manager distribution points as an Intune caching server. So you just go into the properties of your DP, you check the box for that, and then those updates will get downloaded to that Intune, that Config Manager distribution point, and your Intune devices will see those there. And then you go into your delivery optimization policy inside of Endpoint Manager or Intune, and then you add those servers that you've enabled connected cache on. The new Intune managed devices will get that policy, and then they'll get their updates from that connected cache server instead of all going out to the internet. And then just know that it, like I previously said, it will complement Windows Store updates, your Edge updates, and your M365 apps for enterprise. What do you need to get started with this if you have it today? If you have Windows 10 Pro, Education, or Enterprise Edition, you can use Windows Update for Business. If you have Windows 10 team, for if you're any Surface Hub users on the call, we can definitely use Windows Update for Business with Windows 10 Team Edition. You can, of course, if you're still running your Surface Hubs and you do upgrade those to Enterprise, you can definitely, those will still count. Windows Holographic for Business, those are in your HoloLens. So I don't know if many of you have HoloLens sitting around, but obviously that is a version of Windows 10. And then I want to just make sure that when you do set your telemetry, set it a minimum of required so that you get the basic telemetry that you need in order to use Windows Update for Business. If you decide to bump that up, obviously you'll have more information at your disposal that you will be able to use when making decisions. If you need support to get Intune deployed and you haven't deployed it in your organization, then you can also take advantage of Fast Track. Just as long as you have over 150 users, you can go to fasttrack.microsoft.com. You can put in the service request and they will help you get that deployed. So with that, I will stop my presentation, see if there are any questions, and we can ask those in the chat. And then if not, we will conclude our call.
Actually, I wanted to kind of chime in on a couple of things that you brought up there. So as Scott was talking about towards the end there, I'm gonna actually share my screen here. Scott was talking about delivery optimization, and a lot of you guys might already be using Windows Update for Business today already. If you're using SCCM, you've moved the workload over to Intune already. But what a lot of customers don't do is they don't take advantage of update compliance because they don't know about it. They don't know that it actually is where you need to go to get any details about your update status. And so when you set up update compliance, this is what you see. This is in the Azure portal. It's not even in Intune. It's in a completely different portal. But inside of here, this is where we can get our security update status. We can get our feature update status. So that's what you'd expect. But then also delivery optimization status. What Scott was just talking about at the end of his presentation there is, okay, so Microsoft, you're telling me to set up this delivery optimization thing, which is effectively just peer-to-peer. It can have devices share content amongst each other. And you might be thinking, well, that's something that could really impact that end user. Like I don't want the end user to slow down. I just don't want to do that on maybe all my student devices. You don't have to. You can actually target different policies in Intune to have different machines. So you might have higher spec machines that actually act as delivery optimization cache servers, if you will. They're just still clients, but they're just serving content. And so how do you track the bandwidth savings? How do you know that this is actually doing something? You can look at the client, but you're not going to go look at every single machine and see how much content was delivered from each machine. So with update compliance, we actually have a note in there that I've got highlighted right here that says delivery optimization status of 98.4%. And so what this means is that I've got a number of clients that are actually using this. And so as I drill into here and I scroll over to the right, I can see the different configuration groups, as well as the device counts within those groups. So HTTP and LAN, this is effectively just, well, I did every time I do that, every time. Back that up. Go here. Sorry about that. So when you look at HTTP and LAN, what this means is basically any clients that are behind your firewall, that are on your network, are sharing content. When I look at internet, HTTP plus internet, that means that clients are sharing content with clients over the internet, and that's something you wouldn't want it, right? You would only want to share content among clients that are within your network, and so so the default is HTTP plus LAN. Now you can use groups as well. So if you have a group of devices that you want to put together, so you might have a classroom or maybe a school. If that's the case, then you can create a group and you basically assign a GUID as an identifier. You just basically create just some random GUID, target that to, within your delivery optimization policy, you would target that to all of the devices in the group. That GUID gets stamped on every single device. And so when a client wants to go out to the internet to download a Microsoft update, it'll check with the delivery optimization service and say, hey, I'm in this group. What about all the other machines that are in this same group? Who has that content? And then they'll share the content amongst each other. So different ways of configuring DO, but generally speaking, most will have it set to HTTP plus LAN, which is basically just any machine that's essentially behind your NAT. And so when the content is sharing amongst all the different clients, we break down the content distribution on which different update type. So like Scott was mentioning that we do Microsoft updates, but we also do not just like your Patch Tuesday updates, but also feature updates, as well as the Windows inbox applications or applications that come from the store. Anything that comes from the store can also be leveraged through delivery optimization. And what we find is actually, when you look at all the different content types, now my environment's not representative of what we see out in the real world, but in the real world, what I've seen some customers have is when I look at this apps type and I go over to the right and I look at LAN bytes, I'll see that the LAN bytes column will be larger than any other update type, because these apps it's like calculator. And you might have the Xbox app, you might have like Skype and a bunch of other things that come from the store. All of those things update very frequently. It's not just once a month. You might have an app that updates like 3 times a week, and it's hitting the store and it's downloading that content. Well, imagine that you have 20,000 devices or 60,000 devices, and we have a calculator update that goes out. Well, that update hits every single machine, and you're not leveraging SCCM for that. You're not leveraging any sort of caching mechanism for that. So every client is going out to the internet and downloading however big that update might be. Now, it might only be maybe a meg or two, so it's not a big deal. But what about Minecraft or some other larger application, might be a couple hundred megs? Like that starts to add up real quick. And so I've seen some customers where apps would show up as like terabytes of data, and we had no idea at the time. Like the network team might complain, say, hey, these Windows devices they're really chatty. Like they're going out to the internet, they're downloading a ton of stuff. But you didn't really have any idea of where that, like what exactly the content was. And so this actually kind of shows you where all your content is coming from and how much bandwidth you're actually saving. So if you haven't set up update compliance yet, not just for DO, I'm like right now I'm just talking about DO, but even going through things like security update status, like for your regular Patch Tuesday updates, this will go through and actually break down based on the different OS builds, how many machines have the build installed, how many don't. If you have machines that have update issues, this breaks all of that stuff down, and then you can start to drill in to these different rows, and you get into what we call log analytics. And within log analytics, you can actually either use the built-in queries because that's effectively what I just did. I clicked on that row and it showed me the query that it's using to grab that data. You can create your own queries if you want based on the schema for log analytics, and then break down exactly if you have machines that have errors. Like I don't have any errors in my environment, but if I did, I could, the reports that I was just looking at, that would, if I had some errors like update issues, actually, maybe I got one right here. So I can click into this and see, progress stalled. So under deployment status, I can see that the progress from this machine stalled. Don't know exactly why, but this will at least give me an idea that something happened with this machine. And that's something that I've got to go investigate. And again, you don't get this data directly out of Intune. We are looking at trying to get this data into Intune, so you don't have to jump between 2 different places. But right now, all this stuff, all this data is coinciding with Azure, not Intune. And so with that, we've got just a few minutes left. Any questions? The chat pulled up right now.
And if you want, we could do a quick session maybe on our next office hours or one after that on how to set this up, that Azure compliance, what settings you need to go into. It's not very hard, but what does that look like, and record that so you can take advantage of this.
Yeah, there are definitely some policies that we got to set up on the Intune side of things to do that. And then you also do need to have an Azure subscription. So if you're not the one that manages your Azure subscription, you'll have to work with whoever in your organization does. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, because we're ingesting all of your Windows Update data from your clients, so you don't have to pay for anything for that. Whereas with log analytics by itself, you do have to pay for to ingest other data. But for Windows Updates specifically in relation to update compliance, it is a totally free service. You don't pay for any of the data that's there. So if you are working with someone on your Azure team and they're like, hey, log analytics is something that we got to pay for, how much is this going to cost? You can tell them that there is no cost for update compliance. It's in the documentation, also talks about the cost for that as well. But yeah, so we can definitely go through a separate session on how to do it too. All right, well, if there aren't any questions, and Ryan just got some link there on how to get started. If there aren't any questions, then I guess we can wrap up a few minutes early. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and look forward to talking to everyone next time. Take care.